and welcome everybody. This is the kickoff event for the March 2020 Reparations Recruitment Drive hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And today, this is our kickoff event. We have our web show featuring the Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and we have a goal through this membership drive to win 100 new members to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So that is our goal for this week, and we are calling on white people everywhere. If you support African liberation, if you want to see, if you're sickened by what the U.S. is doing to oppress and colonize people around the world, and you want to make a difference, and you support reparations, then you should join this movement. You should join the reparations movement, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And we are honored to be joined today by an incredible revolutionary leader of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru Movement, the organization that formed the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Ali. Let's get the 100 new members.
Yes, let's do it, Uhuru. And I'm also excited to be here with my co-host today, Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. Uhuru, Jesse.
Uhuru, well, I just want to join in saluting Chairman Omali Yeshitela and welcoming you. And it's a great honor to have the chairman on our program tonight. And I also want to salute Comrade Ali here, our amazing membership chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I also want to salute Chairwoman Penny Hess, who was originally scheduled to be on this program tonight, but won't be able to. However, we will be interviewing Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who has worked under the leadership of the chairman and the party for over 40 years to build white solidarity with the African Revolution, tomorrow on Reparations in Action at noon. So you can tune in for an interview with Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I want to give a major revolutionary salute to the African People's Socialist Party Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela. Uhuru to Deputy Chair Onezene. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
And just salute the leadership of Deputy Chair and the Chairman in forging the African Revolution, in leading and building a worldwide movement of African people fighting for national liberation and self-determination. And we're very excited to be here tonight as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement with our Reparations Recruitment Week and our goal to win 100 members, which means 100 white people who reject our allegiance to our own white ruling class and who align our interests and our future with the rest of humanity, with the struggle of African people to be free of the oppression that they have faced for the last 600 years. So this is history in the making, and we know that between now and March 15th, when this recruitment drive will wrap up, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement will be at least 100 members stronger than we are today.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. And we know that because we already have people who have decided to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement during this Reparations Recruitment Week. So I just want to shout out some of our new members that we got during the week. We got 8 new members already on just the first day of the Reparations Recruitment Week. So I want to salute Glenn Lieber, who became a general member in Seattle, Washington. I want to salute Eric Nelson, who became a Che Guevara sustainer at $10 a month in Ridgewood, New York. This is also including renewal, people who decided to renew their membership and continue to join the USM. So that would also include Opa Hamilton, who renewed her membership in Ohio. We have Courtney Hartman, who joined as a general member in Emeryville, California. We have Matthew Gallagher, who joined as a Che Guevara sustainer, $10 a month in Cleveland, Ohio. We have Jeff Tomalo, a Steve Biko sustainer for $5 a month, who was recruited by our comrade Jackson Hollingsworth, who lives in Tampa, Florida. We have Michael Reynolds, who lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we have Adrian Hoffman, who's our most recent member, who joined this evening, Malcolm X member for $30 a month in Lexington, Kentucky. So I just want to give those people a huge round of applause. And along with going for 100 new members during this week, we also really want to encourage people, if you are already a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, to go ahead and upgrade your membership, upgrade your sustainership. And I want to salute Nina Guevara, who has already done that and upgraded to a Che Guevara membership. So, Uhuru to Nina. And when you do this, when you become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement during Reparations Recruitment Week, or you upgrade, you get this awesome new button that I think is featured somewhere right up there that says, "I stand for reparations now." So we encourage you, join, and you'll get this awesome new button. So now I want to turn it over we have our special interview with our guest, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I just, again, really want to appreciate you, Chairman, for being on this web show. This is the most amazing recruiter that we have in the Uhuru movement, no doubt. And the Chairman has, worked to build the African Revolution, the worldwide African Revolution, for more than 50 years, and is an incredible revolutionary leader. And after the Black Revolution of the 60s was crushed and defeated, it was the Chairman who brought it back, who built the African People's Socialist Party, and who created the brilliant theory of African internationalism. So I just really want to appreciate you, Chairman, for being on today.
Well, Comrade Ali, thank you so much. It's good to be here with you. I did this waiting for you to show up, and you did. So here you are, yes.
Uhuru. So the first question we have for you this evening, Chairman, is you formed the Solidarity Movement back in 1976. And this is something that had never been done before, an organization of white people working under the leadership of the African working class, organizing in the white community to build solidarity with the African anti-colonial struggle. And the party, founded in 1972, 4 years later, formed APSC. So what led you to form an organization like this, and how did you come to the conclusion that such an organization should exist?
Uhuru, that's a very good question. As you mentioned, the party was formed in 1972, and that was a groundbreaking event. Nothing like that had occurred before, nothing like the party. We went through the 1960s. We came to the 1960s primarily as a consequence of spontaneous struggle. People were involved in the civil rights movement, fighting for democracy and things like that. But becoming conscious of the need for revolutionary organization is something that happened in the heat of the struggle. So we saw the emergence of formations like the Black Panther Party, and even the Black Panther Party had a philosophy that presupposed the center of revolutionary struggle. The primary force for revolution was what was characterized as the lumpen proletariat, not the working class itself. And so with the founding of the party, after the party was formed from those of us, me in particular, working with Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, that's when the whole Black Power slogan demand emerged in 1966. And then SNCC came under fierce assault by the U.S. government. It was a courageous organization, young people, not necessarily class conscious, but bold, truly committed to democratic transformation. And within this context of struggle, the demand for Black power emerged, influenced in part by Malcolm X, by people who followed Malcolm X. SNCC, to some extent, some forces who were connected to SNCC were close to Malcolm and the philosophy that Malcolm X was promoting. And from the SNCC experience, where I was jailed as a member of SNCC, and from the SNCC experience, it became clear that we had to move beyond protest politics, that protest was not enough, that we had to think about actually seizing political power, seizing and wielding political power. And the political party seemed to us to be the most perfect vehicle through which that could happen. So we created the African People's Socialist Party with the background in SNCC, at JOMO, the Hunter militant organization that was the bridge between SNCC and the African People's Socialist Party. And in 1972, when we formed the party, we were also conscious of the limitations of race nationalism. That is to say, a kind of nationalism that was based essentially on race, as it's characterized, race and racism. There was something not too logical about the racist analysis for us, that we found we had to answer the question, if the issue were simply some people, the bad people are white, and the good people are African or black, then how do we explain the existence of people like Duvalier in Haiti, who was a brutal murderer, killer of our people there? How do we explain the existence of people like Mobutu in Congo, and also the local preacher who was selling us out every day, the local black preacher? So we had to come up with explanations for this, and we've found ourselves engaged in serious study in the process of struggle. In fact, it was struggle that made it necessary for us to try to find out the answers to these questions. And this is what contributed to our understanding of the colonial question. Colonialism. We could not have created the African People's Solidarity Committee if we had been simply race nationalists. It's coming to understand colonialism that helped us to be able to do this. And there were others who were talking about colonialism, but they talked about colonialism and racism interchangeably, as though they were more or less the same thing. And we say they're not the same thing. And that, in fact, racism is simply an ideological expression or the ideological foundation of the whole capitalist system that was founded on slavery and colonialism. So we said the issue is colonialism. And because we understood that, then it immediately transformed how we could understand the relationship between white people and us, because it wasn't asking white people to like anybody. It wasn't asking Africans to like white people. It wasn't this kind of subjective thing that the whole race question had led us to understand. We said anybody should be able, who's on the right side of the question, should be able to unite in a struggle against colonialism. In fact, we were witnessing people at the same time who were saying that they united with the people in Vietnam who were fighting against America and what have you. And they weren't saying that the Vietnamese had to integrate with Americans or anything like that. They were not putting forth some kind of race analysis. The Vietnamese wouldn't tolerate that. They weren't looking for a race analysis. And we saw other people engaged in struggle, and white people had an ability to unite and recognize, at least formally, at least verbally, the right of these people to determine their own, define and lead their own struggles. So that was an aspect of it. And then we ran into this situation perpetually of white people who love us, determined to be the one to tell us how to struggle, or what we should do, how we should do it, when we should do it. And they would adopt the struggle of black people as their own and go off and make some struggle in the name of African people. So that's not appropriate. You can't do that. You can't. We're involved in a struggle against colonialism for self-determination. And if you're going to participate in that struggle, you want to participate under the leadership of the colonized. There's no such thing as the colonizer joining a struggle against colonialism and defining how that struggle should be made. And so that became, something that was necessary as well. And since even the SNCC days, Jomo era, there were some white people who would work with us. In fact, I remember here in St. Petersburg, Florida, where in 1967, it might have been, probably was, because the last of 1966, no, it was 1968, where I had been brutally beaten, handcuffed in the backseat of a police car, and beaten with clubs. And the city erupted in guerrilla warfare. I mean, it was burning for months, literally. And I was semi-underground in the city and came up in the middle of the African community. The city is on fire. Cops are everywhere. And there was this meeting that we had called in the African community. And I get to the meeting, and there are three little old white women sitting up in the damn meeting in the middle of the African community, in the middle of a rebellion and what have you. That was extraordinary. So, who are these women, who would dare to even come and do this? So we saw evidence of a capacity for solidarity. And that's not the only time we saw that. We saw other evidence of a capacity for solidarity. And so that is what helped to inform us about the ability to do solidarity organization. 1976, an effort was created, a mobilization was happening. This was on the bicentennial. It was the 200 years after the Declaration of Independence here in the United States. And this country was ablaze, the ruling class, with efforts to spike U.S. white nationalist patriotism. I mean, everything was red, white, and blue. Curb stones were red, white, and blue. Fire hydrants were red, white, and blue. I mean, everything was red, white, and blue. They were using this bicentennial, attempting to really draw the white population of this country into a nationalist, a really kind of reactionary nationalism. And forces began organizing under the influence of the Puerto Rican Revolutionary, the PRSP, Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a bicentennial without colonies. Well, that's a contradiction in terms, but the fact that they were raising the colonial question gave us the ability to join in with that, because we were struggling against the anti-racism kind of politic. And so this mobilization, bicentennial without colonies, gave us the ability to join in with them. And then it's in the middle of this, as soon as this mobilization was over, we pulled together with some folk who were in solidarity, who had been doing work with us, some North Americans. We called for a meeting in St. Petersburg, Florida. I think they're representative from, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 different states that came to this meeting. They came from everywhere. And everybody was all enthusiastic, and they, yes, let's do that. And then by the time it took them to leave St. Petersburg and get back to their destination, most of them had called to change their mind and say they didn't really want to do this. They wanted to have parallel kinds of organizations, right? We do the black thing, you do the white thing, et cetera, but they did not want this organization under the leadership of the anti-colonial African People's Socialist Party. But we felt like it was necessary to do this, and we felt like it was necessary to build this new front of the African Revolution behind enemy lines, so to speak, within the colonizer population, and also to make this struggle with the colonizer leftists who decided that they knew what was best for us. And in fact, it got so serious that we began to refer to them as Ku Klux communists and ideological imperialists. And so the African People's Solidarity Committee was our response to that. It was strategically very powerful, very important to do that. We broke up the solidarity, the absolute solidarity of the white population, and the leftists were the ones we had the most serious struggles with. They were the most nationalist. They were most nationalistic left patriots, if you will, of all. And when we first started this, the solidarity movement, we found all kinds of explanations about why it couldn't work. Of course, black nationalists had problems with it too. They're stating that, well, you can't trust white people, so you can't do that. And we're saying that it's not trusting white people, we trust our strategy. That's what we trust. We trust the strategy that we have developed. What's yours, right? And then the white leftists, leftist women who denounced the solidarity movement as white lesbians working under black men leadership or something to that effect. And as I say often, I still don't get exactly what that was about, but that was the ultimate insult. That was a really serious thing. And then there was this ultra-leftist communist organization, well known at the time, that said that the solidarity movement wouldn't work because because white workers or white people would not work against their own interests. And that was an assumption that working under the leadership of the Black Revolution was working against their interests as white people. So I think that it was an absolute perfect thing to do. I think that the moment, the history demanded solution to certain kinds of contradictions, and I think we responded to it. And there's no doubt in my mind that it has been a groundbreaking event. The founding of the party, which meant that the African people now, the workers, had our own party. It's not a matter of spontaneously finding that revolution was necessary. We started off saying revolution is necessary, and that we did, various kinds of things to try to facilitate that. And one of them was the founding of the Solidarity Movement itself. Uhuru. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate the whole history, and I just think it's so powerful. And I mean, I know learning this history, and some of which I didn't know, some of what you were just saying, but even just hearing pieces of that history in the past is part of what made me want to be a part of this movement and become a part of that history, something that's actually involved in shaping the future. So I just really appreciate that, and just the whole history of of the struggles that you had to go through, and what led to forming the Solidarity Movement as a strategy of the party, and how it's different from anything else that's out there. So,
yes. You see, we take this for granted right now. The existence of the Solidarity Movement is not startling. I mean, let us say white people see it, leftists see it, and they don't freak out and things like that. But that wasn't the way it was then. And that's what I'm saying. It was really groundbreaking. The struggles that we had to go through with the Black nationalists and with the white left nationalists. I mean, the real serious struggles that had to go through, so that we were the weirdos, we were the freaks out here, right? And so now everybody's trying to be freaky. You know what I mean? So, so even if there is no solidarity, they create, some ersatz, kind of solidarity movement and what have you. And the fact of the matter is that how can you be talking about being a scientific revolutionary, being a revolutionary movement guided by science, and ignore the fact that there are white people, and white people have been fundamental in the oppression and exploitation of African people, and some strategy has to be developed that recognizes this reality. And you can't ignore it. You just can't act like they're not there. You can say, well, the white people are the devils, et cetera, et cetera. And so at least if you say they're the devil, then point me to some holy water or some kind of exorcisms that, take me someplace where we can solve the problem. Because the thing is, as it has been said, philosophers have done what? Explain the world, but the point is to change it. And if you have an explanation that can't contribute to changing the world, I mean, unless, again, you say, you get some holy water or, something like that, or white people, mutations, I don't know anything about genetics to that extent, of whether white people are mutations or anything like that, but I don't see a single geneticist with the Vietnamese when they were engaged in this incredible struggle. And when Che was marching through Bolivia and Africa and all these other places, and in Cuba, I didn't hear of any geneticists or anything along with them. They had science of revolution, and they made a revolution. And to try to push us out of science, and that's what many of them will do, would come up with these ridiculous explanations about the reality that attempts to explain the world, but there's no explanation of the world that's worth a hill of beans, as some white people say, if it does not contribute to changing the world, and that's the fundamental thing. So anyway, it was a real different situation now, and we have done this. We have now made the existence of solidarity relatively ordinary, in the sense that it's, you might not like it, et cetera, and you might not like because it sets new terms for what white people could, have to do. So that might not be pleasant. But the fact is, it's not the same as it was when we first started this work. And that's profound. And it's profound, people like Penny Hess, you know, who had to brave, you know, like this white nationalist stuff, you know, and because we saying, we don't need you to work in the African community. Well, we need you to go, it's where all of that stuff is, and that's in the white community. And, and you know, and they went into the white community. Penny and other comrades did that, and now it's a normal for the solidarity movement to do that, so that, you know, we talking about, we need 100 new members and join the 130 some odd people who are working in 130 some odd cities in the United States and more than 30 states in the United States. That's what we want you to do. Be on the right side of history, because we're going to turn this stuff right side up. Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. And part of what you did in terms of taking these things out of being this freak politic, lunatic fringe or whatever as it was perceived, was the question of reparations. You brought that, including through the solidarity movement, through the strategy that you built, you brought reparations front and center to the point where now we saw 12 presidential candidates in the Democratic primary claim that they were for what they called reparations. And we wanted to talk about that a little bit. If you could say a little bit about your vision of what reparations looks like in practice, and how that might differ from what someone like Elizabeth Warren might have had in mind.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I'm glad Elizabeth Warren talked about reparations. And she doesn't know that the process that got her to talking about reparations is something that began a long time ago, consciously by people who said, we're going to make reparations a household word. We said that. The African People's Socialist Party said that. And at a time where reparations was not a new thing, but it was not something that was a mass issue. It was not a mass organization associated with it. And it was narrowly defined as payment for slavery. And then even in that context, a person who came to be known as the father of reparations some 7 years after we had the first reparations tribunal in this country, was putting out information that reparations could pay for, get your teeth fixed or a new car or your house painted and stuff like that. That's not how we understood it, but we were glad they were talking about reparations, because reparations, the way we understood it, and standard is a function of revolution.
Yes.
And the fact is that any genuine reparations has come as a consequence of victory in struggle. I mean, that's how the French, even though they had robbed Africans in Haiti for a century or more, and were able to demand that Africans in Haiti who had defeated them and chased them out, the first successful slave rebellion in the world, the first successful workers' revolution in the world happened in Haiti in, what was that, 1804 is when it was consolidated. And so now the French, along with the U.S. and all the white powers in the world, did an economic quarantine of Haiti to starve it unless it paid France reparations for the loss of its property, which was us. Now, people like to point to the issue of two issues. They say, well, the indigenous people got reparations, and they say Jews got reparations. Well, how in the hell can the indigenous people have got reparations when every inch of this territory that white people live on, that everybody lives on, has come at the expense of their existence, and that they're suffering that even today? What kind of reparations can you give them unless you start a boat building process that's sailing back across the ocean or something like that? And then the other example they offer up is the Jewish reparations. And this was a payoff. This was a way that the imperialists propped up this illegitimate white nationalist settler state that was occupying Palestine. Right. And so to make it something that could survive and endure in the face of the resistance of the Arab people whose land had been stolen, so this reparations went there, created an incredible military force, incredible economy that was there, and it's pumped even today. And not only does it do that, it monopolized the whole issue of oppression and terror as something that happens as only primarily to white people, that was done by other white people, not what was done to us that's responsible for my demand for reparations, that's responsible for the indigenous people demand for reparations, et cetera, et cetera. So those are bad examples for reparations. But for us, we were glad to see the reparations demand, because for us, it was a critical question, because the African people have been so beaten down and fed this nonsense, this garbage, that somehow the white people are now, what do they call it, exhausted from giving. I forgot the term they used.
Fatigue.
Donor fatigue. Giving to the black people. You won't work, and you're just having babies, et cetera, et cetera. We just taking care of you. And so, and we're paying you welfare. I mean, that's the thing. Even today, we're paying you living off welfare queens, et cetera. This is the garbage that's pumped out to African people, to the extent that it's in every form, every medium that people run into, that it's something that it gets internalized. And the people are able to perceive of themselves as that, but the reparations demand. Put the reparations demand out there, and then it becomes necessary to explain the poverty of African people and the wealth of white people. This is what the reparations demand gives us an opportunity to do. It gives us the initiative and the people the initiative, and you will see that initiative being exercised the more people in our communities grapple with the question of reparations. So what has happened, of course, is that we have been successful. We did the first tribunal on reparations for African people in this country in 1982. We did tribunals in different cities in this country for about 11 years in a row. We provided the first quantification of amount of value that was stolen from African people in labor alone. The party did this.
Yeah.
And we presented this at the tribunal that we did in 1982. And so and then in 1983, I was traveling throughout Europe, taking the reparations demand. I attended the first Green Party, going into Parliament in Germany. I was there with the reparations demand. I went to Ireland, Northern Ireland, where the Irish were struggling against British colonialism more directly than now, and won support for the reparations demand there. So I went to France. I was all over the place taking the reparations demand. So this is what we did, and we put it out there in the world, and we want the world to say reparations, reparations, reparations. Now, it's our responsibility. You say, what is reparation? What will it look like? Well, it looks like what we're doing now in many ways. It looks like once we recognize we're engaged in a struggle against colonialism, and we can place forces within the colonizer nation itself, in the colonizer's neighborhood, in the colonizer's home and bedrooms, and things like that, who demanding and bringing up the reparations issue, and not just demanding the issue, but engaged in struggle, and political struggle, education, persuasion, and the rest of that. That's what we do. I mean, there are people who are in this movement, their parents, their mothers, their fathers, and stuff like that. They might not know exactly what the hell it is they're doing, but they have been won to play some kind of role in the reparations issue. That's a major thing that we have contributed to. People are saying, well, what will reparations look like? It looks like Black Power Blueprint that we've organized in St. Louis. It looks like so many other aspects of the work that we're involved in, and that the people in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, who are located in the 130 cities and 30 states in this country, participating in making reparations happen now. And what's so fundamental about it is that even people nationalists who see the reparations things gaining traction, they don't understand that one of the things that makes it possible for Elizabeth Warren and the others to talk about reparations is the work that we've been doing now since the 1980s, and the work that's happening in the white communities. The fact that we've got institutions in this country where every time somebody comes through there, and there are thousands of people who visit our institution, and thousands of white people, they run into reparations, and they are asked to voluntarily participate in reparations. They're asked to buy a sweet potato pie as a means of providing some kind of reparations. So this stuff is happening. We are doing reparations right now, and we're not just we're doing reparations, and we're winning sectors of the colonial population to some unity with it. And how that looks right now, is quite different from how it's going to look 2 years from now, 10 years from now. And as the crisis of imperialism grows, we're going to see that this looks extraordinarily potent as compared to even now. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing, of course, is that the party has a responsibility to winning this reparations demand in the most oppressed sectors of our communities, in Everton, West and South Africa, if you will, in the 5th Ward in Houston, Texas, on Church Street in Norfolk, Virginia. We have a responsibility of taking this reparations demand among the masses of the people. And once this grips the masses of the people, as it will, then it doesn't matter too much about taking it before Congress and to the courts and things like that. Reparations will be a product of victory. In the process of becoming victorious, reparations, the masses taking reparations will be an incredibly important factor.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really appreciate that, and I know other comrades do, because we've got some new members in the Uhuru Solidarity movement based on that. So I want to salute our new member, Frank, in Seattle, who joined as a $10 a month sustainer.
All right,
Uhuru, Frank. And I want to salute Diane Tournay, who upgraded her monthly sustainer to a Che Guevara level. So, Uhuru. And I also want to salute Jackson Hollingsworth, who also upgraded his sustainer to $20 a month. Uhuru Jackson.
Uhuru Jackson. So that means 4 more new members and 8 more upgrades. Uhuru. Is what we're going for.
Yeah, Uhuru.
All right. For tonight.
For tonight, yes. So yeah, Chairman, I really appreciate that explanation, and just the way that the party has made, African People's Socialist Party, and you have made reparations a reality. And you know, it's a concrete way that we as white people can take a stand and support this. And it makes it so clear, everything that's, you know, going on in the news that we see today. You know, we see what's happening, whether it be from Trump to coronavirus to all that kind of, whatever it is. And this is or even just the police violence that, you know, happens in the black community that doesn't happen in the white community. It doesn't exist in the white community like it does in the black community. And this is a concrete way that we as white people can take a stand. And it's extremely practical. And it's actually, reparations is not that confusing.
Right.
You know, we hear that a lot. On the first question people will say is, you know, well, what is reparations? What does it look like? And people seem to be pretty boggled by it. But by the time they leave our table and we can show them, you know, reparations looks like ordinary white people taking a stand and supporting projects like the Black Power Blueprint. It's really clear. And it just really appreciate the party for making reparations a reality and creating that space, you know, for white people to join and be a part of this process. So I really want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just really unite with that. And for people who are watching, we encourage you, I'm not sure if we mentioned exactly how to join, so I just want to make sure to clarify that. The way you join is you go to uhurusolidarity.org and click Become a Member, or you can go directly to uhurusolidarity.org/join and become a member. And please go ahead and do that while we are live, because we want to announce it. We want to thank you. And when you join during this week, you will get the special Reparations Now button that's possibly on display on this screen right now. Okay? That says, I stand for reparations now, solidarity with African people in the U.S. and around the world. Uhuru. Uhuru.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Jesse. And so, Chairman, another thing I wanted to ask you about, because, you know, we as white people have a stake in this process, you know, and you have often spoken about how white power is responsible for oppression, for all the oppression throughout the world, whether it be for white workers, white women, the white LGBTQ community, all that any oppression that we see. And I was wondering if you could talk about how the struggle against all forms of oppression is found in the struggle for Black power.
Uhura. I think what's really important is to take the mystery out of the advent of capitalism in the world. Otherwise, people will think, like George W. Bush, that white people have everything because, as he says, we are good, and that's why people, quote unquote, hate America. But the reality is that capitalism has its basis in the real world. I'm not talking about some theory, Marxist theory, in terms of how the development of human society moves from these various stages, that I'm not liquidating in totality, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the real world. There is no mystery to the advent of capitalism. It came as a consequence of what is called slavery, the enslavement of African people, and the advent of colonialism, colonial domination, and stealing the resources of the peoples of the world. This is what provided what Karl Marx called the primitive accumulation of capital. That's referred to today by most people who are trying to go into business as startup. How does the whole thing start? This is not a chicken and the egg, kind of philosophical quandary that we're faced with here. It started as a consequence of enslaving African people. And for more than 200 years, having free labor. Think of it, you have some people working for you for more than 200 years and you don't pay them anything, millions of people. And then the theft of the lands when we say the lands, you're talking about primitive accumulation. Marx doesn't talk about this. He doesn't talk about Australia. He doesn't talk about Canada. He doesn't talk about the U.S. itself being a part of the primitive accumulation. He doesn't talk about the land on which Europeans came in what is now called the Americas being a part of the primitive accumulation. He talks about the gold that came from these places and silver, etc. But all of this is the primitive accumulation of capital. And so this is where the startup came from. This is where all the resources came from. And these are resources that created a horrific social system that we know as capitalism. And, it has, some fundamental features to it. And of course, the critical feature of capitalism is parasitism. So this rise of capitalism is what took Europeans, white people, out of feudalism. They lived under feudal domination in Europe. And so it was slavery. It was colonialism that brought the wealth and resources that democratized, if you will, Europe and the life of white people. The democracy for white people came at the expense of the most horrific kinds of tyranny, brutality, rape, and pillage against Africans, indigenous people, and the rest of that. So here you have the emergence of white people, white power, and capitalism. They come together. And so we look at, and it didn't just happen like that. There's structures, economic and political structures that were created along with it to maintain its existence. And these are parasitic tentacles that's attached to most of the peoples and countries around the world that brings resources to white people, to Europe and Europeans. And of course, right now, there is a certain kind of clogging in these arteries that's causing some contradictions based on the emergence of other forces who are contending, with white power. But that's where it all comes from. So we live in a world that is comprised effectively of oppressed and oppressor nations. And these are the fundamental contradictions, is the one between oppressed and oppressor nations, which is not to say that within the oppressed nations there are not contradictions. There are contradictions among the oppressed. And there are contradictions even within the oppressor nation. And this is what gets confusing to a lot of people, because women are oppressed in the oppressor nation. And homosexuals do get oppressed in the oppressor nation. And workers do get exploited compared in the oppressor nation. But what all of this relies on for its existence is the relationship between the oppressed and the oppressor, and all of the people in the oppressor nation live at the expense of those of us in the oppressed nation. So this sometimes phony attempt that people made, black and white unite and fight, which happens at every crisis, you understand? That's why I learned that white people knew the lyrics of We Shall Overcome after 9/11, when the towers were coming down. Now everybody, we were all in the same boat. We came on the same boat. We were just in different locations on the ship. Yeah. So that's the fundamental point that we would make. And so that people who are genuinely interested in changing the world and changing the conditions of the oppressed and exploited in the world have to recognize that the fundamental contradiction, there are contradictions in all things, but all of them are not main contradictions, a fundamental contradiction. And the fundamental contradiction in this relationship is that between oppressed and oppressor nation. And if you really want to win this freedom, and most of it rests on the foundation of Africa and African exploitation, then that's what you have to unite with in order to turn it around. Right. That's the way forward. And we can win. Mm-hmm. We can win. We are winning. And the white population, by the way, has historically been a very backwards population. And it's not backwards based on genetics, but based on perceived interests. Because your class interests can make you stupid. They really can make you stupid. Some of the smartest people I've known otherwise do very smart things, but when we brought them into a process where they had to work for the masses of the people, they became instantly stupid. They couldn't do anything. All of the stuff they were doing when they were working with major corporations and stuff, they forgot it. They couldn't do any of that. So your class interests can make you stupid. And that's what happens, often in this relationship. So we're not talking about the difference in whether somebody has intellectual capacity, but they may be intellectually, their intellect may be just disrupted by actual class interests. Uhuru.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Uhuru. So, Chairman, you are the leader of the African People's Socialist Party, emphasis on the word socialist. And as members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, we are socialists.
Right.
We are socialists under the leadership of the party. Socialism is now a word that we hear a lot, also including in the presidential election. One of the two frontrunners in the Democratic race says that he's a socialist, but he is actually opposed to reparations for African people. So could we talk about socialism? What is socialism, and how does this relate to the struggle for reparations?
Well, I think part of what we see happening now, again, is we're looking at evidence of this whole crisis of imperialism. The fact that now we got white people talking about reparations running for president, right? I mean, and they, from the major, ruling class party, talking about reparations. And the fact that from the major ruling class party, or participating in the major ruling class party, there's someone who is a declared socialist. Is part of what that means is the crisis of imperialism. It's sort of like, what do they call it? This liberation theology. How the Catholic Church rescues itself by going among the most oppressed peoples in the world to get you to maintain a relationship to the church, through some theology. When has the Catholic Church been for liberation? And so now you have Elizabeth Warren reparations, and I think was it Kamala Harris, was she for reparations, and you have those reparation forces. And like I said, I'm glad to talk about reparations because it's ours, just ours. Talk about it. For the longest period, people didn't know it was there, but now talk about it, brag about it, put it out, and on Broad Street, neon lights, reparations. And the same thing is true with socialism. Because this is part of the crisis. Capitalism is going in growing disrepute around the world. I mean, you can almost count the people who actually believe in this stuff, and many people hang on to it because they get punished if they don't appear to hang on to it, like they attempted to punish Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is being punished just because he calls himself a democratic socialist. And it's worth mentioning that the reason Sanders, there is such a thing as democratic socialism. Why is there a democratic socialism? Is there a democratic capitalism? There's a democratic socialism because it wants to distinguish itself from revolutionary socialism. It wants to distinguish itself from things like democratic centralism. It wants to distinguish itself from the fact that socialism in the real world, the kind that recognized by revolutionaries, is a socialism that is a precursor to communism. It is the early stage of communism. It is that place that I think the Catholics refer to as purgatory. You know, you're not exactly capitalist and you're not exactly communist. You're not in heaven and you're not in hell. You're in the process of getting to heaven. Socialism cannot share the same social space as capitalism. The thing, if somebody is a socialist, you see America right now engaged in brutal murder, mayhem all around the world to protect capitalism. Socialism, it's not going to say, oops, we made a mistake. We don't like what we've been doing in the past. Let's put it on the ballot and we can then vote socialism in. The instances where we thought socialism was voted in, we've seen it. We saw it in Chile. We saw what happened with Allende and how they came in and murdered him and the rest of it. For socialism to come into existence, capitalism has to be defeated. And Sanders doesn't talk about defeating capitalism. You've never heard him saying capitalism has to go. Capitalism has to be defeated. Never heard it, and you won't hear him say that. But that's the only way socialism can come into existence. 1. 2, socialism is something that comes about when the workers, the working people own and control the means of production. It's snatched the means of production out of the hands of this nasty minority that bleeds the peoples of the world, that's destroying the earth and making it impossible for people to live. Where, the world that we live in, where the majority of the people don't have clean water, the majority of the people don't have electricity and what have you, that's capitalism that's doing that. And so socialism can only come into existence through the eradication of that. And so that's the workers in power, the workers in arms, the working class in arms. That's when socialism is there. And with the defeat of capitalism, it cannot come about any other way. So when Bernie Sanders talks about socialism and he says he's opposed to reparations, one of the fundamental contradictions that scientific socialists talk about is that of exploitation. And the exploitation occurs in the capitalist system because the capitalists do not pay the workers the full value of their labor, right? They don't pay the workers for what they produce, what we produce. They pay us for our ability to produce unless you're black or on some other colonized situation where they don't even pay us enough to produce. That's to say, we don't, in other words, capitalism will not pay you for the table you made. It will pay you enough so that you can get bread to eat, pay your rent, and make some babies to reproduce yourself as a worker to come back and create value for them. But this contest between the workers and the capitalists, the owning class, is one about who's going to take what they call surplus. What they call surplus is the amount beyond what what we get, what we produce, beyond that amount beyond what we receive in return for what we produce. So we make a table, and the table, we make a table per hour. Work in a factory, we can make a table per hour. The table sells for $30, and we get paid maybe $10 an hour. We make a table an hour, that's $30 an hour. We should be getting, we don't get $30 an hour. The $30 an hour minus wear and tear on the machinery and that kind of stuff. We don't get that. We get $10 an hour. Right. So that means the other $20 is what they call surplus, or profit. That's surplus value. That's how they characterize it. That's what pays for the free health care, by the way. That's what pays for the free education and whatever. That's stolen value. The capitalist steals it from the rest of the people, etc. So our socialism takes it back. Our socialism would give Bernie a job at $15 an hour as opposed to the other way around. You understand? So So that's what we are talking about. And so you see now the capitalists, the enlightened sectors of the bourgeoisie are getting in front of these critical questions because the people people will have reparations and the people will have an alternative to capitalism. Only alternative capitalism is socialism, and that's where people are going to go. And so the advanced thinking representatives of the capitalist class will come up with solutions, get in front of the question, and if we allow them, they'll take us into the swamps around these questions and away from genuine capitalism, genuine socialism.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And when I actually came into this movement, I didn't really know what I was. I thought maybe I was a capitalist. I didn't know if I was a socialist, but I knew that reparations was definitely the way forward, and I knew there was something that was calling my name about this movement. But what really made me understand, why capitalism is so bad and why socialism is so necessary was the way that the party has defined capitalism as parasitic capitalism, that it needs to just continue to exploit people around the world in order to have any of the profit and any of the materials. And that's to me was like, wow, you can't be a capitalist if you are against the oppression and exploitation of people around the world.
And how can you be a socialist if you're against reparations?
Right.
Because this is a struggle for stolen value. That's what the struggle. That's what the struggle against capitalism is all about. But
exactly.
it's this that surplus that we're talking about. It's a struggle for stolen value.
Right.
And where will you find a location where value has been so incredibly ripped off, stolen, taken, than with African people, the entire continent of people enslaved and what have you. No, Bernie Sanders is a fraud. And I'm glad that he's saying socialism. Keep saying it, Bernie. Socialism, socialism, socialism. You're damn right. We'll define it. That's our job to say what it really means.
I agree. I'm glad he's saying socialism too, so we can ask you questions like that one and get answers like that one.
Well, I'm glad he's saying socialism. I'm glad that what we see is an implosion of the ruling parties and real transformation. Because the Republican Party has already become something else, and the Democratic Party is in the process of becoming something else. And it's really interesting because what you hear the pundits talking about now is trying to maintain the moderates. They want the moderates to stay in place. They're saying, you got these extremes, you got Trump over here and Sanders over there, and then the reason you have these extremes is because what they call the moderates have been recognized as traitors and sellouts and exploiters by the vast majority of the people. So even Trump is able to trick people because people are tired of treading that same path all along. And the same thing is, and the problem is that we have so-called white leftists who are afraid of white people. Unlike the solidarity movement, they don't work with white people. They push the white people off. They're rednecks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's their mantra, And so Sanders has gone for that sector, a sector of the white population. Right. And he's excited them. A lot of young people are excited by Sanders. It's really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uhuru. Yeah, I really want to appreciate that, Chairman. And we have some exciting news, actually, before we go to the rest of our interview.
Let's talk about it.
We have an upgrade. We have a new Reparations Legacy membership.
Uhuru, you want to explain what
I would love to explain it. So Reparations Legacy membership is somebody who gives at an amount of $2,000 a year or more. You can either do that in a one-time contribution or at least $167 a month. And in the room with us, Amanda Carlozzi has just become the latest Reparations Legacy member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So I really want to salute Amanda Carlozzi, who's also our national treasurer and vice chair and an amazing comrade, and really salute that stand of reparations to African people, and who also texted me to explain to everyone how to upgrade. If you're already a member, you don't need to feel left out of this reparations recruitment drive. You can upgrade, and when you upgrade during this week, like our new members, you will receive one of these special give back buttons. Reparations Now. So how do you upgrade? If you're having trouble doing it through our website, email membership@uhurusolidarity.org membership@uhurusolidarity.org,
Right.
and our membership office will immediately make that happen. Is that correct? Okay, so that's what you can do if you want to upgrade your membership during this program. And we want to thank people who have upgraded and who have joined. We want to win at least 4 more people to become new members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement tonight. And we are honored to have our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, on the program with us tonight. And I just want to say that when I first met this movement, one of the things that really struck me was, because I had looked into socialist organizations and things like that, and just something about it never sat right with me. I could never put into words. And what I finally was able to understand through coming into the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and studying the theory of African internationalism and learning from you, Chairman, is that, like you said, there's oppressor and oppressed nations. And what was missing from every other discussion about socialism and communism and anything that I had ever seen was that understanding that white workers even, that all white people sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people. That it doesn't matter, that as you have said, Chairman, the white ruling class and the white working class were historical twins that were birthed by the same parasitic process of the assault on Africa, the enslavement of African people, turning African human beings into the first commodities, the first capital of this horrendous social system, and that lifted white people out of poverty, as you've explained, and that has been the case for all white people, and that's why there's been a material basis of white opportunism. Left to our own devices, we always end up being Ku Klux communists or some variation of Bernie Sanders. And to really look in the mirror at our history, and I also want to salute Chairwoman Penny Hess, who has worked under your leadership and done this work to expose the history of white people and what we've done to the rest of the world, that we owe reparations to African people. And we demand reparations from our ruling class, and we are going to be carrying out a campaign to wage a struggle with the moneyed sector and win reparations from CEOs, billionaires, the ruling elite, while at the same time understanding that ordinary white people have not been innocent bystanders in this process that you've talked about, Chairman. We have blood on our hands, and not only do we have a responsibility, we have an interest, because any contradiction we face in this society, the way out is solidarity with the African Revolution, reparations to African people. So as you have said, Chairman, we have to become anti-colonialists as a matter of self-defense. It is actually our only future. Those white communists who said white people would never work against our own interests by supporting black power were dead wrong, because it is in our interest to work under the leadership of black power. As you've said, Chairman, a genuine white communist will work for the destruction of white power and for the victory of black power, and will be subordinate. We'll subordinate our own short-term opportunist interests to the long-term interests of the rest of humanity.
Well, it's interesting because some of these same communists call themselves Marxists and what have you, and they talk about how it's the leadership of the working class. The working class, this and that. The working class has the thing, so they are having a problem working under the leadership of the working class, they say, right? But not the black working class,
right? Right.
Not the black working class, not the African working class. I mean, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And the thing, Comrade Jesse, that you just mentioned, how can there be a discussion about revolution, about communism or socialism or justice that does not take into account, that does not have as a fundamental component of the analysis and strategy African people? How can white people, live in the same damn cities, kind of, sort of, you know what I mean? I say that kind of, sort of, because, even the interstates, you don't want to get off at the wrong exit to go into the black community. We live in a country where just 40 years or so ago, if that long, the world recognized America as a place that terrorized, brutalized, lynched, murdered, bombed African people. The whole world did that. Right. And today, it is not the white America that's the frightening specter. It is black people, and especially young black people. We're afraid of black people, black people, black people. Like we were the lynchers. Like we were the ones bombing churches and things like that. This is how the history has been flipped. And why what we're doing here is so crucial. And also to take this thing out of this whole racism connotation and raise up the colonial contradiction as the one that we have to contend with. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
That actually brings us to our
Yeah,
next
I was
question.
gonna say that goes right into our next question. So, we're calling on white people to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and one of the popular things out there right now is for white people to go to these unlearning racism workshops where you sit in a room and you just try to unlearn your racism. And I can guarantee you, when you join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, you will not be invited to any unlearning racism workshops, but you will be invited to reparations building actions. And can you just expound upon your famous statement that racism is just the ideological underpinning of parasitic capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people are dumbed down. This country, the most politically backwards people in the country probably are white people in this country, and maybe, I would say here. I used to be able to say, South Africa, but and here. But this country dumbs people down, and you can see it's at like the center of the whole imperialist system right now, even if shakily so. And so people have no understanding of a lot of things. But when you look at society, we're talking about the economic base of that society. How people get what it is that they need to survive, live with, food, clothing, and shelter, what kind of system, provides that. And then you're looking at the superstructure. And the superstructure is like really the ideological expressions that reinforce that kind of economic base and reproduces people who relate to it. When you talk about racism, it's a natural thing for white people to have these kinds of ideas based on the economic base. The economic base comes from colonialism and from slavery. So you won't find an economy that revolves around slavery and colonialism that will teach freedom, that will teach, enlightenment in the real world. In fact, it's absolutely necessary to falsify history, all these other kinds of things, because you can't take the risk of the oppressed ever knowing the truth. So you have to falsify history. You have to falsify history even for those who are the colonizers. History has to be falsified. So when we talk about the racism, you're talking about the ideas that's in the heads of white people that make them willing participants in the exploitation, the oppression of the colonized, Africans and other people around the world. That's the thing. It's that is the racism. That is the ideological underpinning. This is the ideological underpinning of that kind of social system. So if you want to change the ideas, then we do certain things, actions, etc. Even the reparations work helps to change the ideas, and you see that people achieve a lot more clarity as struggle happens, and the people, the masses, place limitations on their ability to believe things today that they believed yesterday. And you've lived long enough to see people having to change their ideas about some things, the invincibility of the United States with huge buildings coming down around them and white people jumping out of buildings, not the white people jumping out of buildings, the natives and everybody, the natives who throw down their guns and run when the white man shows. That's what it's supposed to be. But now white people doing that and heroic, soldiers committing suicide all over the place, and the spike in the death rate of white people in this country as a consequence not only of losing what appears to be their future, but also losing what appears to be their face, as they've defined themselves in relationship to the rest of the world. Stuff doesn't work no more, and people should stop messing around. What was this guy's name who wore the eyeglasses? Who was the guy who was the big force, one of the thinkers.
Stephen Hawking.
No, thinkers for the Vietnam War, for the administration.
Kissinger?
No. Oh, anyway, I forgot how he was characterized. I can't even think of his name right now. But, he knew the damn war, they couldn't win in Vietnam. He knew it. He kept saying they can't win, but he kept acting like, he kept promoting programs and things like that to keep that war going on. And I'm just saying that this is untenable, white people. This is untenable. It's not working. And there are people who are, as young as you may be, are old enough to see changes that's happened almost every day that challenges of how this thing is supposed to work. It's not working like that anymore. And so stop messing around and just come on. Come on over to the right side of the question.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Yes. Join the Uhuru Solidarity
Join the Uhuru
movement.
Solidarity.
Join
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so thank you, Chairman. Go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's I think one of the most profound things that, really allowed me to understand why it was so important as a white person not to actually, that reparations is a concrete act to take that stand. And, that's how we can concretely change the world. And because in college, you read all these books and it's, you're constantly in your head. How do you unlearn racism? And then you walk out the library and all the same conditions still exist. And I know, just talking to fellow white people, I know I have some friends tuning in tonight, and I just want to call on you that if you're sick of seeing the way this system runs and you read about it and you think, I'm just in this place, I've got to be a better person, I've got to unlearn my racism, I've got to start being nicer to black people. It's not what it's about. That you have to join the Uhuru Solidarity movement. You need to start paying reparations because reparations is the way forward. And we got to stop talking about racism and we've got to start talking about reparations. So I just really want to call on all of you out there. If you want to be a part of something that's changing the world, then you should join the Uhuru Solidarity movement. And you can do that by going to uhurusolidarity.org/join. Really take that stand.
Uhuru. And I got some announcements I'd like to make, if I may. So, Chairwoman Penny Hess is tuning in from St. Louis, and Chairwoman Penny has upgraded to the Queen Nzinga level membership, which is $20 a month.
Uhuru. Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny.
And believe it or not, Kyle Weiss was due for a renewal of his membership, and tonight he went ahead and did that. $10 a month.
Right on.
Uhuru, Kyle. Our great comrade here who's engineering this web show tonight. And Janice Kant, who is a longtime member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, an amazing comrade, and also a Reparations Legacy member already. Put in $50 as a one-time contribution of reparations, and she wrote a statement that she is a sustaining legacy member but would like to make this one-time payment of reparations. Looking forward to that reparations button. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Janice.
And Santosh, who is here with us in the studio audience tonight, has upgraded to the Fannie Lou Hamer membership at $40 a month. Uhuru, Santosh. So that means this program tonight, Chairman and Ali, has brought in 6 upgrades and 2 new members to the Uhuru Solidarity movement.
Uhuru. All right, so we have our last question. You want to go ahead?
Oh, yes. Okay, so Chairman, so being a member of the Uhuru Solidarity movement, as you explained so eloquently throughout this interview tonight, is the concrete work that we can do as white people to support reparations to African people. Specifically, in this period, the work of USM, the material solidarity work of USM, goes towards the Black Power blueprint and the dual power African anti-colonial economic programs of the African People's Socialist Party. Dual power is another concept that you have brought to the fore in the national liberation movement of African people and for the whole world. Could you talk about dual power and how your strategy, the party's strategy for dual power, informs all of the work of the Black Power Blueprint and the work of the party as a whole?
I think that's an important question, Comrade Jesse, because I think it was 1977 when I wrote the paper on tactics and strategies for Black liberation, and where I put forward the strategic objective of dual power, capturing dual power. And I've seen it used since that time by some other forces who seem to see the question of dual power as simply something like an alternative power, or something that coexists with the colonial power. They don't even call it colonial power. But what we talk about dual power, we're talking about making the revolutionary project. It's part of the revolution. And we're talking about capturing political power, Black political power, state power. And a part of that process of dual power, we say it's dual and contending power. It is a power of the colonized contending with the power of the colonizer. Mm-hmm. So we create economic spaces, independent economic spaces that rely on participation in relationship with masses of people, certainly among the colonized, and then colonizer population that can also unite with this. Our objective is to negate the power of the colonizer. It's not to exist side by side with the colonizer, it's to negate the power of the colonizer. It's negation of the negation. We say the negation of the negation is because the existence of colonialism has negated our power. Mm-hmm. So we want to negate the power of the colonizer. That's what this movement is about. That's what everything that we are doing is designed to do that. Somebody said, well, why would you open up a center, a community center in the middle of the African community because there's a city community center down the street? Mm-hmm. No, that's their center. We're talking about the center that's the people's center. That's dual power. It's a power that contends with the center down the street. That's what it is that we do. And that's what we mean by dual power. It is a part of the process of taking over our own power. Our objective is to have it all. It's not to have all the power. That's what anti-colonialism is. That's what we're struggling for.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairman. Really appreciate that. And I just really want to salute you for being on this web show with us tonight. It was incredible to have you on here, and just the really profound statements that you made and just really puts out the organization that was built, the African People's Socialist Party, that the African People's Socialist Party really is the vanguard. Mm-hmm. It's the vanguard of the African working class, and it's the vanguard of creating, the future for all of humanity, even for white people. Mm-hmm. So I just really, really, really want to thank you for being on this show with us tonight. We unite that capitalism must go.
Must go.
White people need to jump off the pedestal that we sit on and join with the rest of humanity. Join the Reparations organization and join the Uhuru Solidarity movement. And I really, also want to salute the leadership of the party, Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela, who has really made reparations a reality in terms of the Black Power blueprint on the ground, making it real. And I also want to salute Chairwoman Penny Hess, who has really forwarded the struggle in the white community and who has made it, you just has created the organization and provided the leadership for us as white people to go into the white community and raise reparations. And I also want to salute Jesse here, chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and I want to turn it over to you, Jesse, for any final words.
Well, I just want to unite. This has been an amazing program. Thank you so much, Chairman. And I want to salute our new members. Round of applause to all of you who have joined tonight, as well as our upgrades. And if anyone out there that's been listening to this interview is wondering, you've heard this amazing discussion tonight, and you want to know specifically, well, what does it actually mean to be a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement? I will tell you in 3 simple principles of unity. 1, we are under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. That's not even really a principle of unity. That's a self-evident fact. We were created by the African People's Socialist Party under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. So that's number 1. Number 2, we organize in the white community for reparations to African people. And that's based on this whole incredible analysis that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has just laid out, the revolutionary science of African internationalism. And going into the white community and organizing other white people to support reparations to African people is actually an amazing, thrilling experience. Always interesting, never boring. We draw the line, so of course we're going to face those who want nothing to do with this, but that is the risk we take in going out there and meeting all the people in all the different 130 cities that are members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So we are out there. There's nothing special about us. We're regular white people who have been able to heed the call of the African Revolution to get on the right side of history. So that's the principle number 2. And the third is that we stand in solidarity with African self-determination. African people have the right to lead their own struggle, and we unite under the leadership of the vanguard party of the African working class. So if that makes sense to you, then you should be going to our website right now, uhurusolidarity.org/join, and becoming a sustaining member. And the beautiful thing about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is that your membership is an act of reparations to African people, because your membership is a monthly contribution or a one-time contribution of reparations to the work of the Black Power Blueprint and the African People's Socialist Party. That's where the resources go. And not only is your membership an act of reparations, but your membership builds an organized struggle for reparations, because everything we do as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is about reparations to African people. Everything, from top to bottom. We are the reparations organization of white people in solidarity with Black liberation. So if that makes sense to you, if you want to be on the winning team and be part of changing the world, which I know you do because you're tuning in tonight, then please go to uhurusolidarity.org/join and become our, what would it be now, the 12th or 13th or something like that? We'll have to do some math, but we're on our way to winning 100 new members into USM, and we want you on board. We want to win you, we want to recruit you, and get you signed up tonight at uhurusolidarity.org/join, because although you will get this awesome give back, which is still on the screen, that you stand for reparations now, what you really get is a connection to the rest of humanity that is fighting for a world without oppression, slavery, and exploitation. And that is an incredible thing. The most meaningful decision that we can make as white people is to join the fight for reparations to African people. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Chairman, any final words before we close out?
I just want to express my appreciation to USM, Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Comrade Jesse and you, Comrade Ali, and Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I just think that it's important for the members of the Solidarity Movement to recognize your own significance. Most of us who get involved in this work, in this struggle, have a lot of humility, and it's difficult for us to see like our own significance. And perhaps as individuals, we are not that significant, but this is a really powerful and heroic stance that's being taken. If you just think about what it is that you're going up against, how historically, in terms of history, like how history has unfolded up to now. And then here you are, it's taking this stance, going against everything that this country, not just this country even, the world. Look at what's happening to African people, oppressed people everywhere. It's just an extraordinarily heroic stance, and it's a selfless stance. And by which I mean, it is not a stance that makes the false assumption that it's something material that you will gain from this. You gain participation in a whole new world, and you gain solidarity with the oppressed peoples of the world. It is very powerful, and I just want to express my appreciation, and I hope that there are other people who are chewing over how they're going to move with this, who will come on board and join the Solidarity Movement. It's a really important step, and guess what? We're winning. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. I just wanted to thank you again, Chairman, and salute your leadership and the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And anyone who's watching, I want to let you know that Chairman Omali Yeshitela will be our keynote speaker at the Uhuru Solidarity Movement National Convention, Reparations Uprising in St. Louis at the Uhuru House, April 18th and 19th. And actually, this is an exciting announcement. The night before, there's going to be a reception at Mokabee's Coffee Shop where they will be hosting the Uhuru History and Art exhibit. So we will be there the night before to hear the chairman speak, as well as Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who will be one of the main featured speakers at the convention as well. And actually, we have some other exciting confirmed speakers. Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela is confirmed to present at the convention. President of International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, Kalambai Andanette, Agitprop Director Akile Anai, Chicharo Masimba of the African People's Socialist Party and the Black Power Blueprint. This is going to be an amazing convention, absolutely incredible. Yes. So I just want to urge people to go and register for that convention if you haven't already, uhurusolidarity.org/convention, and read more about it. And also wanted to just remind everybody that we are in the midst of the Reparations Recruitment Week. So in addition to joining, we are making a call to white people to recruit for reparations. Become a recruiter, sign up. Go to uhurusolidarity.org/recruit, or just post a comment on the Facebook page. We will find you. We will be in touch with you if you want to sign up to do a table, if you want to sign up to make some phone calls, if you want to sign up to be on our social media team. If you have 5 friends, family, coworkers that you think would be able to hear this message and do what you did and become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, join us. Become a member of USM and become a recruiter for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's Reparations Recruitment Week. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Jesse. And yeah, I just really want to appreciate the chairman for being on tonight. It was so great to have you, and just the profound statements that you made. And I want to end it with our famous chant, unity through
reparations!